Welcome to this edition of the Mystery Wine Blind Tasting. We've got this beautiful number in this glass to taste this evening with all of you. So if you're joining, please let me know. And wow, very expressive. Today has been a wonderfully expressive day of wine. By that, I mean, I'm not positive, I haven't had a chance to look, but for those of you that are familiar, there's a biodynamic wine calendar that exists in the world of biodynamic wine production, biodynamic agriculture. There's this idea of a calendar. I think Maria Thun was the original proponent of that. I could be wrong. I know she published a calendar that has or posits the idea that there are 4 specific types of days that exist. There's sort of a fruit day, there's a flower day, there's a root day, and I'm missing the other one, and someone else can fill that in for me. And based on the kind of trajectory of the earth and where you are, there's a different type of day, and grapes and wines express themselves in that particular set of a set of circumstances when you're in that part of the day or part of the calendar. And so today must be a day that is sort of a flower day, because there's just all kinds of aroma. We spent the entirety of the day enjoying wines from all over the world. We've had a tasting today from Lebanon, a tasting today from Portugal, wines from multitude of places, including Germany and Austria and Alsace. And everything today just seemed really wonderfully aromatic. So that's a beauty of where we're at today. And so neat to be tasting wine. And this wine right in the glass is a really great expression, I think, of that too. It just has an abundance of aroma. And that's a great thing that we'll talk about, of course, this evening with Sarah and the crew from up in Pennsylvania, and Dean and Bobbin. Hello, hello. And Dan and Veronica. Great to have you here. And Candy and Kevin. And Natalie, part of the Kibbutzim clan up there in Pennsylvania. So we've got the Pennsylvania crew fully represented this evening. I'm delighted to have you with us. I'm glad to have you here with this particular wine. You know, I opened it, and just as soon as I pulled the cork, it just had this flood of aroma, as I mentioned, and the aromas themselves seemed to indicate the potential for, say, Beaujolais right off the bat. It sort of had this tart, fresh fruit character. Looking at the color now already, I'm not sure that that's where it should be, but that's part of what you should pay attention to as you first encounter a wine. What pops out? Don't get stuck on it, but make a note and explore that note. See if there's a reason that note jumped out. Your taste memory can be ahead of your conscious kind of deductive process and might give you a clue where to head. So, Rob and Kathy, good evening. Matt and Ann, welcome. We're glad to have you with us too. Dave, Julie, and Sarah will be coming in for dinner tonight. Saturday. Oh, how great. That's wonderful. I look forward to seeing you then. I'll be here. Tomorrow night, I have the pleasure of, not necessarily the pleasure of being away from here, but I'm not going to be at the restaurant tomorrow night as I get a chance to MC the Loudoun County Wine Awards, for which I am the director of the competition. And so I get a chance to help reveal the winners of all the categories and the overall winner of the competition, and shed some light on some great wines that are being made in Virginia, as we're doing all month here at the restaurant relative to Virginia Wine Month. It's just an exciting time for wine in particular. So, oh gosh. All right. Well, for those of you that are with us, let's play this game, shall we? What do you smell? What do you see? What do you taste? See, smell, taste. Let's do that first. So what do you see when you're looking at this wine? What does it tell you about the wine? As you swirl it, of course, it's setting the outside rim of where it swirls. It creates a layer of wine, and then it begins to drop. Does it drop in sheets? Does it not drop in any visible way? Does it drop in the form of little tears or thicker tears that then stay formed and create legs? What do you see? This one represents, I think, a good form of tears. The tears are consistent and crying. They're a little syrupy even. They're slow moving. And the legs that formed, and I don't think you can really probably see that, but maybe if I do that, maybe there are substantial tears. you're looking at those tears, and those tears are indicating, and then the legs that form from them are indicating a potentially higher alcohol or perhaps some residual sugar, something that is derived from the fermentation of sugar to give you something with richness and character there that lingers. And so that's an indication perhaps of a warmer climate, of a riper expression of the grape. So this is giving you a potential clue that this is from a warmer climate, thicker skinned, riper grape potential. Veronica, yeah, we're all seeing kind of this small, slow moving tears that leave legs. Robert, you're throwing out clear with garnet and medium deep. I agree with all of that. I think that's a great call. Sarah, you're ahead of me on aroma with respect to oak notes and black fruit, and we'll definitely get there too. But so when you say oak notes, what notes are you picking up, or what are you guys picking up from the oak standpoint? So we're always, as I mentioned before many times, we're looking for a few things: fruit, earth, and wood. Fruit, earth, flavors, and wood. So fruit, fresh fruit, dried fruit, stewed fruit, medicinal fruit. Is it citrus fruit, stone fruit, i.e. fruits with a pit? Is it tree fruit, apples and pears? Is it berries, red or black? Are they raspberries? Are they cherries? Are they blackberries? Are they currants? And so all these elements come to play. Are they cranberries? You have a range of things. And all these things tip you to one particular potential varietal and maybe an indication of place. So if you say, gosh, I think this is super rich and deep in color, purple, and big, thick tears with heavy legs, but I smell cranberries. It's kind of a disconnect. Cranberry is a tart red fruit, and with that kind of description of power and weight, you might be expecting a deeper, darker black fruit that's maybe more raisiny or jammy, right? So it could be that it exists, but it's just something to key into where you see the tart red, bright fruit, you're thinking generally a little bit cooler climate, or maybe you're in a warm climate at a higher elevation or in a cool vintage, something that would express differently. So clear garnet color, we've got agreement on that. Dried fruit, so as we smell this, we're looking at dried fruit, woodsy, and Candy's picking up cranberries. Like craisins, dried cranberries, or fresh. And as we're looking at a few things, fruit, so cranberry falls in that, dried fruit falls in that, right? Earth, what is earth? Earth can be literal earth, dirt, can be humus, kind of something that is manure. It could be kind of a oak, sort of from a tree. It could be bark. It could be cedar notes. It could be cedar notes, maybe more of wood note, excuse me. It can be sort of leathery notes, things of that sort, earthen things. And then you've got wood, which is not necessarily to say that the smell of wood, but it is the characteristics that come from wines aged in wood. And so you might get that cedar, that popcorn, that spice profile. Can be dill sometimes. So some vanillin or vanilla in the wood. So that vanilla is an indicator of some wood aging potentially. Cranberry from Robert, but fresh juice. So a sweetened cranberry quality. Cherry or pitted fruit, some craisins. Craisins have that intense cranberry flavor with some sweetness. So we're talking about some sweeter fruit, which may go with the idea that this is riper expression by way of the actual visual, giving us that hint that's linking up with the aroma. Raspberry, dried cherries, hints of hay. Dean, nice job. Not a whole bunch of earth coming out. So if you're not getting a whole bunch of earth, and as we taste this and it's not maybe particularly acidic, or doesn't have a real dimensional quality of acidity, maybe we're thinking about New World as opposed to Old World. It's not a guarantee yet. We're just starting to build a profile, and we're leaning one way or another, seeing what we can do to rule out more than we're trying to identify what it is. So as we said, if it was all tart cranberry and we were thinking it's Petit Verdot from a warm climate, not really, not ideally. Probably not likely. So what can we rule out from this profile? We're talking about a robust wine, generally speaking, a deep kind of richer profile to it, clear in color. It has viscosity, so it has higher alcohol, potentially some residual sugar, but probably unlikely given the red that it is. Raspberry, dried cherries, dried cranberries. So intense flavors of fruit that are by way of ripening and even raisinating. So let's taste the wine. And see if you can match up what we've laid out as the profile with what you taste. Is there anything that's different? Is there anything that's the same? Are there verifications of what you smelled and saw on the palate? Does the body weight match the intensity you thought it would be by way of the visual with the tears in the legs? Does the acidity match the kind of intensity of the dried fruit that's there? Even there, is the dried fruit that existed on the nose equal what you find on the palate? Are there any tells on the palate for wood that wasn't necessarily there on the nose? There was a touch of vanillin perhaps, but not much else. Are there any woody characteristics, or earthy characteristics, I should say, on the palate? So Julie's noting that the body doesn't necessarily match the aroma, and I think that's fair. I agree with that quite a bit. Dean's sharing the idea, Gene and Bobbin are sharing the idea of skim milk in texture, so lighter in texture. I think there's probably a little bit more richness than skim on the finish, but it is sort of tart and lean up front. The acidity, low to medium. Two votes for skim milk. I see where you're coming from there. The wine itself seems thin, but there's a tannic expression to this that's richer. So if we're talking about, and I'm still salivating, so the acidity is a little bit higher than low to medium for me. It's more medium, maybe medium plus. I'm still salivating. Part of that's the experience, I think, of the tannin. Most of it's the actual acidity, I think. As you're experiencing this, wow. There's a little hint of wood coming through, but it's more about alcohol. There seems to be a little heat. I'm feeling a little bit in the back of my throat. I'm now smelling a little bit of that warmth kind of coming through. And Dean's saying the aroma is stronger. Others are saying the same thing, that it's not necessarily matching up with the palate. Sort of a tannic expression, sort of a tartness that's in the wine coming through that isn't necessarily identifiable from the nose. Sylvia's throwing out one varietal we might consider, which would be Malbec. Thank you, Sylvia, for that. Kathy says Côte du Rhône. So Côte du Rhône would traditionally be a blend of Grenache and Syrah and Mourvèdre and potentially other varietals, but certainly more about Grenache and Syrah and Mourvèdre. It's an astute observation from Natalie that this smells more New World but drinks Old World. So you have the potential there, which isn't necessarily indicative of where we should head, but maybe this is New World in a cooler climate, cooler site, a winemaker who's trying to be more fresh, maybe picking a little bit earlier. So you get some of that expression on the nose, but then the actual structure of the wine is lighter and a little more delicate. Maybe this is Old World and has had a ripening or is just a warmer place in the Old World. Uh-oh, Robert, I hope you don't have COVID. Or yeah, at least maybe you're just under the weather a minute as you're kind of adjusting to the booster. Metallic taste. I don't have that. I'm not experiencing that moment myself. it's opening a little bit. It was a touch tight. It was expressive out of the nose, but in the palate, it was a little bit tight to begin with. So Côte d'Ivoire, we have as an option Malbec. Are you thinking Malbec from Argentina? Are you thinking Malbec from southwestern France in Cahors? This is a tough one, isn't it? So right off the bat, Matthew's throwing out France. Yeah, France is a good guess. Southern Rhone is a good guess, I think, is a good estimation. Strawberries in the nose. I like, Veronica, where you're headed very much, because I was about to say the same thing, and I appreciate being prompted before I get there. Carignan. Carignan is a grape varietal that can have some of that sort of deeper, richer power, but also some of that sinewy tannin and a lighter freshness to it. Sancerre is another grape varietal that can do that. Generally a little bit lighter on the Sancerre side than the Carignan side. Malbec from Argentina. I would expect a little bit more richness in the body from Malbec. A little bit more of a blue, violet, kind of blue berry kind of element maybe coming from the wine. If it's Malbec, it's got some of the tannin structure you might experience from the southwestern part of France, but not the deep, inky, black kind of quality to it. South American, since we're talking about Malbec, there's a chance of, say, Carmenere too, and Carmenere would give us, I think, a little bit more pyrazine or green characteristic. But Sarah, as you say South America, what notes prompt you to think about South America? And what grapes, potentially, what place? The acidity to me is just building. So is the tannin, which keeps me, generally speaking, in Europe as opposed to the New World. But I like the idea of southern France. Kind of that Carignana could happen in Spain. Could be that kind of interesting bit. So we've talked a little bit about this before, where we're saying we're in the New World and we're in the Old World. And there's a taste or a flavor profile that exists for, say, Italy vis-a-vis northern Spain, and France, Portugal being different. And so does this taste Italian? Does it taste more French? A number of you have already said French, and I kind of tend to agree with that. And it's interesting. It's just sort of a thing after a while drinking wine. You're like, this isn't Italian. This is French. This is French. This isn't Italian. And there's a characteristic about wine that indicates that. And I think it comes a little bit from the oak. It comes a little bit from how there's this more earthen, funky element that exists in Italian wine. Not to say it doesn't also exist in France, because it absolutely does. But there's just a general lustery polish to the fruit. Matthew's thrown out Bordeaux with a question mark. Sarah, it's getting more acidic for you too. Yeah, mine is for sure showing more of that. Bordeaux, Matthew, absolutely is potential. From a Bordeaux standpoint, you could have the left bank sort of dominated by Cabernet. You could have the right bank more dominated by Merlot, and dominated, it's almost too strong of a word, where you could have 55% being the lion's share of the blend being one varietal or another. And so I think this could be more sort of Bordeaux Superior, kind of Bordeaux at large, because it's got some leanness to the body. It's not super rich. There's almost a heady kind of confectionery, vanilla bread kind of element that's happening with this particular wine. Virginia Merlot. Natalie, nice. Dean Chianti, also I think a very good call. Doesn't taste as Italian to me, but there's a characteristic about this that could possibly be. I think on the Italian side of things, Dave is throwing out the Virginia Merlot. I like that idea too. Virginia Merlot can give you some of that kind of red fruit tartness, some of that richness. That's not a bad call at all. Playing not the wine, but the actual bottle game, I don't think you'd see Virginia Merlot in that shaped bottle. This gives us an opportunity to talk a little bit about bottle shape, right? And you shouldn't play the bottle shape. You're not really playing the game, right? I poured some blind wine for some friends that were here last week, and they were like, what would he pour? What is he thinking? Is it on the menu? Would it be in the wine list? They weren't playing the wine at all. They were playing me, and they were trying to Sherlock Holmes the guests, as opposed to actually just evaluating the wine and seeing what it might be. But if you were broadening your perspective and just playing the bottle shape, this is a Burgundy bottle shape, not a Bordeaux bottle shape. So the Bordeaux bottle shape has that higher shoulder and would be in more indication that you probably find a Merlot in the bottle. Let's say that you couldn't find a Merlot here, but it would be very odd. Oh, Valdigier. Nice, Sarah. That's a really cool. Yeah. Okay. So something that has that high acid, sort of dried tart fruit. It's very interesting. Like it's not ripe fruit, but it's been raisinated, and it has some tannin, and a little bit of wildness and some structure. Old world for sure. That's a very cool guess. There's this woody spice notes that are now coming out, and Candy's picking up on that vanilla thing. That's the toast coming from oak. That's here. There's a freshness to this now. It's opening, it's evolving, it's getting a bit more expressive, but also there's a tightness to that tannin. Like it wants to kind of unfurl. So what is it not? I don't think it's Pinot Noir. I don't think it's Gamay. I don't think this is. I appreciate that point about Chianti. I don't think it's necessarily Chianti, right? I don't think it's Sangiovese. No, I don't think it's Sangiovese. Something like Nebbiolo. It has a good amount of tannin. It's got lighter characteristic. It's not really showing a lot of other characteristics of Nebbiolo. It doesn't have that sort of rosy element. The color's a little bit different, so probably not. Barolo, yeah, Sylvia, I mean, it should be considered because it's a little bit on the lighter side. It's got the tart red fruit. It's got the tannin. Is it Nebbiolo? Is it Dolcetto? Is it Barbera? No. For me, no. I just don't think this. If this is if it's Nebbiolo, the fruit characteristic and kind of the earthen level would be a little bit more pronounced, I think. And as a result, no. Could it be Pinotage, sort of Senso, as we're talking about, and Pinot Noir kind of crossed? I'm not getting sort of that petroleum note, that sort of rubbery note that you sometimes can get in that smoke earthiness. That's not there. I don't think we're talking about Grenache, so we can rule those out. So it sort of does leave that Rhone kind of Rhone blends, maybe that Merlot element. It's a bad guess. The tannins are a little bit more structured than I would assume to get from Merlot, although Cahors could give you that, but I think you'd get also more intensity. Okay, so recap. When you swirl it, when we were looking at it, it had a deepish kind of color, not fully deep. I mean, it's not the richest color, but it has some. We had rim establishment and then tears and legs that lingered. So there was some intensity. You got a little bit of alcohol on the nose. You get this little bit of warmth in the back of the throat after the taste. tart fruits that are dried, like i.e. kind of dried cranberries. Not a lot of earthen notes, some spice notes, vanillin notes by way of maybe a touch of oak. Yeah. So, and maybe because of that acidity that's kind of there, older world as opposed to new world. Sarah's saying maybe Petit Verdot, Mourvedre. Yeah. So Southern Rhone, Côte du Rhône kind of blend. Absolutely. Dean's throwing back out, kind of settling in on Carignan, and I like that one a lot. Chinon from Sylvia. Yeah, there's a possibility. We tasted one today that was from Saint Champigny. It wasn't Chinon, but was Cabernet Franc. There's no like herbal element here, but that wine didn't have it either. So it could be, and it was all cranberries. That's not a bad thought, right? So Saint Champigny, Central Loire Valley, Cabernet Franc, or Carignan from the southern part of France. I think the alcohol is going to take me to the southern part of France, giving us that little bit of richness, that higher alcohol experience. So Carignan is sort of where I'm going to head. I think it's relatively young. There's no real variation. There's a little bit of a watery meniscus on the outside here. There's not a lot of color variation as you head to the middle. So 2020, 2021, 2019, something in that range, 2 to 4 years old. Carignan, maybe Carignan blend, but predominantly Carignan from the southern part of France. Languedoc. That's where I'm going to go. Where are you going to go? What are your guesses? Preparing for your thoughts. 30 minutes in, it's changed quite a bit and also maintained some of the elements from the beginning. The aroma has muted a touch. It's getting a bit more meaty. I like the Carignan even more. So, yeah, I'm pretty happy with that assessment. Let's see what we got. Ooh, dang. I should have stayed with the Chinon thought. The Anjou Rouge from Mary Taylor. This is neat. Anjou is 80% Cabernet Franc and 20% Cabernet Sauvignon. How neat is that? That's really cool. It's 12.5% alcohol, so it's a little bit on the less ripe side of things relative to the world. This is pretty neat. I'm trying to read this without glasses, but rich but elegant wine grown in vineyards neighboring the famed Chateau Brissac in the middle Loire. So the middle Loire idea of the Saint Champigny idea that we were talking about a moment ago, relative to the sort of Chinon idea. So this is Anjou, and Anjou gives you some of that sort of same characteristic. The Cabernet here being not super ripe, and you get kind of foggy days, foggy nights and early mornings. You get this expression that exists in the wine as a result of kind of a cooler expression, a cooler climate, but you got some warmth and ripeness too. And so this is neat. Dean said Julie we would be surprised by this. Julie said that. Excuse me, Dean. Yes. Well, we are. I would not have placed this in Cabernet Franc, although I should have, because I tasted a Saint Champigny Cabernet Franc today that was similar to this, and the cranberry part was kind of a tell at that. So I should have keyed more into that. And Julie just said, no way, it's a Cabernet Franc earlier. Well, you can't trust her when she gives you hints about this, because she's not trying to tip us in any way, shape, or form. If I at all ask or drill or suggest or see if I can kind of parse out, shut down, as I should be. And I don't really do that much because it's much more fun to not know. So for reference, right on the back of the bottle, you'll see where it's coming from in France. And you get a tiny bit of maritime influence relative to some sea breezes up the Loire River. And you get on the north side of that river, just a neat expression of Cabernet Franc, as we see here. Some structure, some power, some weight, tart fruit, a little bit dry. It's really a fascinating wine with some dimension and characteristic. This is a beautiful wine for a whole host of things. We were tasting wine today with Charles, who's one of our wine reps from Free Run. And he was talking about a Cassoulet he had made for this weekend. And this would be beautiful with that. Gorgeous with rich beans and smoked meats and braised quality and sausage. And Dean, 100%, you're laying the track for where I was about to head, a Thanksgiving wine. Dark meat turkey. You have cranberry sauce. You have sage stuffing, bread pudding kind of stuffs. And you have even, toasted pecans on a sweet potato casserole element. You've got gravy on mashed potatoes. The acidity here, cutting through all of that, a little bit of tannin to glom onto that extra pat of butter you put on those mashed potatoes. Absolutely. This would be magnificent. So a beautiful and very fun wine that I delighted in tasting with all of you. Mary Taylor is doing some cool work. My understanding of her work is that she basically finds really small producers who are doing great things and has this sort of very Spartan label, which is wonderful. And she puts her name on it, but also helps to bring to light, buys the production of some small grower producers from around principally France. So her label, we've tasted a number of things from her. They're affordable wines that are well-sourced, well-selected, and represent, I think, a great value. So when you see Mary Taylor on a label, it's worth exploring more. She's just getting her start in Virginia. I think she's been going for a while, but her wines are finding their way more and more into Virginia. And so we're fortunate all the more for getting a chance to try them. And I am fortunate all the more for getting a chance to try them with you. Thank you very much. We will see some of you here Saturday, others of you here hopefully soon. Thanks for all of those of you. I know a couple of you are in the chat from dinner last night. We had a tremendous experience last night again. I've done 5 or 6 dinners with Chateau Moussard and Marc Auchard from Lebanon, a true testament to what wine can do. Wine from Lebanon can link people from all the way there to Marshall, Virginia, and can create bonds that last decades and persist because of the power of the wine, but also the story and the connection that's created in sharing those stories and sharing the wine, which is what we do on the 3rd Thursday of each month. And I'm grateful for that. Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful week. We look forward to seeing you here soon. If you need a spot to have a wine like this and enjoy a Thanksgiving dinner, we have some reservations available and still openings are there. I think they're filling relatively quickly, but if you wish to join us for a Thanksgiving meal, we have that option for you. Otherwise, hope to see you at some point here during the fall. And if not here, then certainly on this channel, tasting next week's or next month's wine in November. And we'll wait till then to find out what it would be. Cheers, everybody. Thanks.